What is good, Osiris? Here, stuck in the middle. I want to talk about gender right now in the conversation that's happening in our country, sparked recently, not just by Leah Thomas, but more recently, Ketanji Brown Jackson's nomination hearing. If you don't know, Ketanji Brown Jackson is on the board of trustees for a private school, the private school called Georgetown Day School. And there was some questioning here, and I will get to that question. Stick with me to the definition of woman and why I say it is a loaded question by Marsha Blackburn. Absolutely. It's a good question, though, and why in large part, I did not have a problem with Ketanji Brown Jackson's answer. I had more of a problem with what she didn't say than what she did say. Let's start off here. I want to take it back before the clip that you might have seen that everyone's talking about is what's the definition of a woman. There was a setup that Marsha Blackburn went through and planned for before she got to that point.
With Georgetown Day School, I found it astounding that it teaches kindergartners, 5-year-old children, and I've got grandchildren, and they teach them that they can choose their gender. So is this what you were praising when you applauded the, and I'm quoting you, transformative power of Georgetown Day School's progressive education? Do you agree that our schools should teach children that they can choose their gender?
Senator, I'm not remembering exactly what quote you're referencing, but Georgetown Day School is
It was in a book, and you gave the quote. Okay.
Georgetown Day School is a private school.
Yes.
Okay, I gotta stop it there. It's Ketanji Brown Jackson overall. I've heard probably about 75% of the hearings. It's a lot of hours of boring. Most of them are very boring questions. And sometimes it's Cory Booker just embarrassing himself in front of the world. But she did very well because her approach here was to not give too much information. That's basically everybody's approach. But she did a really good job of not giving too much information. I'm not for that. And that's partly why I'm not for her confirmation, because she didn't give enough information. But some of that can be blamed on the senators for not all the senators, but the senators focusing on things that I think weren't pertinent. Here, she's a little bit off. So she should have been ready for these questions. So she said that the school is a private school. What does that have to do with the question? The question from Martha Blackburn was, do you agree with the school teaching that you can choose your gender? That was the question. If you go down the route that this is a private school, then what you're saying is a private school can do whatever they want. I agree with that. That wasn't the question, though. So she's deflecting, hiding. In her testimony, in my opinion, she never said anything in her nomination testimony that confirmed she believes in critical theory of gender or race. She didn't say anything disqualifying. To me, they did not put out anything, including the child prawn, that would lead me to say, if I were just to look at the nomination testimony, that I would say no. The reason I'm going to say no is because she was hiding and we didn't get to the philosophy behind these things. So she's deflecting with the private school argument. Why is that even coming up? She's struggling here a little bit.
I'm asking, do you agree that schools should teach children that they can choose their gender?
A nominee for the Supreme Court of this law, to be a justice on the Supreme Court, in modern days will never answer that question. I don't think they could if they wanted to, but I don't think you're going to find on either side of the ideological spectrum, any side of it, a justice nominee who will directly answer that question. Because what they'll say is, I could come across a case like this in the future, so I'm not going to give my opinion now.
Senator, I'm not making comments about what schools can teach.
Let me ask you this then.
And that is a fair answer. to say, I'm not making comments about what a school can teach. The question really is more, she is on the board of trustees for this school. The board of trustees, there's no one more powerful in the school than the board of trustees, the board of directors, basically. Like in a company, it would be the board of directors. They control the money, they control the interests. Now, she, in the testimony, said, I don't control the curriculum. Well, no, she doesn't directly control the curriculum, but if there's something in the curriculum she doesn't like, it will, as far as the board, in general, if they don't like, then it won't be in the curriculum. So she's playing games here.
United States versus Virginia, the Supreme Court struck down VMI's male-only admission policy. Writing for the majority, Justice Ginsburg stated, supposed inherent differences are no longer accepted as a ground for race or national origin classifications. Physical differences between men and women, however, are enduring. The two sexes are not fungible. A community made up exclusively of one sex is different from a community composed of both. Do you agree with Justice Ginsburg that there are physical differences between men and women that are enduring?
Senator, respectfully, I am not familiar with that particular quote or case,
Okay.
so it's hard for me to comment as to whether
All
or
right.
not.
I'd love to get your...
That is a fair answer. I mean, what is she supposed to have? Every single case that's ever been in front of the Supreme Court memorized? Now, do you believe her or not? That's whatever. That's irrelevant. The answer is fair. And that's what she would answer for any case that she didn't want to provide an answer from. So that's why these nomination hearings are becoming more and more just silly. Like there's nothing that's really discussed. The one with Amy Coney Barrett actually had a lot more judicial philosophy and knowledge. They really tested Amy Coney Barrett's knowledge, and for the most part, she did well. There was a couple of things that, when I looked at the analysts from experts in the field and lawyers, that she did drop the ball on. But in general, she did well. This one was more about feeding her questions that she couldn't answer. That's too much of that. The senators all know that, so they're grandstanding.
Your opinion on that, and you can submit that. Do you...
That's fair. I need to follow up on that. Are those made public? I have never followed up because they say this a lot in all these testimonies. Well, if you don't have the answer now, provide it to us written. I have never once, I don't think, followed up and heard written response. So I want to hear. I would like to see what her written response is when she has a chance to review the case on what her position is. Do they even follow up and do it? I don't even know.
Okay.
Comment as to whether
All
or
right.
not.
I'd love to get your opinion on that, and you can submit that. Do you interpret Justice Ginsburg's meaning of men and women as male and female?
Again, because I don't know the case, I don't know how I interpret it. I need to read the whole thing.
Can you provide a definition for the word woman?
Can I provide a definition? No.
Yeah.
She's right. No, she can't provide a definition of the word woman. People are using this as a tactic of manipulation for the anti-left establishment, saying, look how crazy it is that Ketanji Brown Jackson can't define a woman. We have to break this down. You're not chilling with her at a bar. You're not at a coffee shop with her, asking her, what's your definition of a woman? This isn't like that some type of casual conversation. So I don't understand why people are playing this like it is. She's applying, she's basically in a job interview, so to speak, to be a Supreme Court justice. What do? They analyze cases. They don't give opinions outside of a case. Every opinion that they provide is attached to a specific case. So you can't come up to her and ask her, what's the definition of an airplane? If I were her, I wouldn't be in her position. I don't have the smarts, intelligence, networking background. And my response would reflect that. I'm not going to be in that position having to answer to any ideologies. So if somebody asked me to define, if Marsha Blackburn asked me to define a woman in that scenario, I would say, Senator, you need to go get a dictionary. And then we need to talk about the separation of powers. I'm going to have a contentious discussion with her. I don't care. So Ketanji Brown Jackson's approach was, let me just say as little as possible, which is fine. Well, I can't knock that. That's how she got where she is, and she's probably going to get confirmed. But for me, you want to play games. You want to ask me the definition of a woman. The separation of powers of the executive branch. You've got the legislative branch. You've got the judicial branch. Ketanji is applying or she's interviewing for the judicial, the highest level of the judicial branch. So now we're looking at Marsha Blackburn, who's in the legislative branch. Don't you dare ask me for the definition of anything that you haven't defined. So that's the conversation that me and Martha would have at that point. And I might align ideologically with many people who are in the non-left establishment, but that's beside the point. I still wouldn't answer this question. I think I know personally what the definition is. We're not talking about personal. We're not just talking about you and me on the YouTube channel. We're talking about the highest levels of the government defining these words. So there's always going to be tension between the legislative branch and the judicial branch and the executive branch. All of them should have tension. That was the whole point, that our founding fathers took the roles of a monarch, a king or queen, and broke it up into these three different sections. I'm not defining any words here for you, Senator. And let me talk to you, and they wouldn't allow me to finish. They would interrupt. But this is what I would have in my head. If you need to know what the definition of a woman is, then go find a dictionary. From the standpoint of my role, if I were to be confirmed as a Supreme Court justice, I review cases. So if a case came to me, I would be able to talk on the specifics about that case. You know who hasn't defined what a woman is the legislative branch. So yes, it is a loaded question. And if Martha Blackburn is a good question, but if Martha Blackburn was sincere, then why doesn't she write up a piece of legislation and put Congress to vote, including Republicans? Everybody you'll start with the Senate if she's going to write it up, and have everybody put a row. She could do that. She could write a simple bill. This is what the definition of a woman is. Everyone vote. She's not concerned about that. She's concerned about using it as a weapon. She's concerned about using it as a way to attack her political enemies. That's how Martha Blackburn is using the question. I agree with the question. The way I would use the question is to try to find consensus. Ketanji Brown Jackson is not in a position to define words for the country. The justices don't make laws. They don't make legislation. They interpret it based on a case that comes to them. So she's absolutely right to say, I'm not defining that. Now I'm going to tell you where the miss is for me.
I can't.
You can't?
Yeah, this is all theater. Marsha Blackburn's like, you can't. Everything I just told you, do you think that Marsha Blackburn doesn't know that? She's playing a role in a movie. You think I know this and she doesn't? It's disingenuous. Let me bring it back.
A definition, no.
Yeah.
I can't.
You can't?
Not in
Okay.
this context.
So
Everything I just explained is why she said not in this context. You know that, Marsha. And then everybody on media runs with it, and they just use it as a weapon, but they're not looking at the big picture.
The word woman is so unclear and controversial. You can't?
Not in
Okay.
this context.
So you
I'm not a
believe the
biologist.
meaning of the word woman is so unclear and controversial that you can't give me a definition?
It took probably a lot for Ketanji Brown Jackson because the reason why somebody wouldn't answer like I answered is because you would come across, the media would clip it up, you would look like an angry person or crazy. They would cut it up to make you look crazy. I don't care. I'm not going to have a senator dare question me on a definition that they have not even tried to define themselves. And when I say by define, we're talking about the legislative branch as a whole, not Marsha Blackburn. Marsha Blackburn can believe whatever she wants. It means nothing if Congress doesn't agree on it.
Senator,
It's so controversial, Senator Blackburn, you haven't even decided on it with your colleagues. This is how this works, Senator Blackburn. Y'all do the laws and we interpret them based on the Constitution. Y'all haven't done that work yet. Do that work, and then then if I'm on the Supreme Court, then I'll help decide.
Senator, in my work as a judge, what I do is I address disputes. If there's a dispute about a definition, people make arguments, and I look at the law and I decide. So I'm not.
The fact that you can't give me a straight answer about something as fundamental as what a woman is underscores the dangers of the kind of progressive education that we are hearing about.
I agree on the dangers of the progressive education, but that has nothing to do with Ketanji Brown Jackson. If you want to underscore what that definition, you have your own powers. Why aren't people running around right now, reporters, Marsha Blackburn, why aren't you walking around right now asking every member of Congress, every member of the Supreme Court, and the executive branch what their definition is? Why is Ketanji Brown Jackson the only one having to answer this question? In order to, one of the ways to amend the Constitution, you need 2/3 of both houses. 2/3 of both houses to agree to pass this, to pass an amendment. Do you think, honestly, that 2/3 of the Senate and the House would agree? And I'm talking about a bill that had literally nothing in it other than the definition of a woman. I do not. So if you also agree with me that you couldn't get 2/3 of both houses to do that, then why are we talking about Ketanji Brown Jackson? We have bigger problems.
Just last week, an entire generation of young girls watched as our taxpayer-funded institutions permitted a biological man to compete and beat a biological woman in the NCAA swimming championships. What message do you think this sends to girls who aspire to compete and win in sports at the highest levels?
She can't answer that question either, because that would bias her if somehow a case like this came to the Supreme Court. I don't know what the case would look like. She talked about there's some cases working its way up. Now I don't know what those cases are. But I'm going to end with this. The questions that weren't asked are what bothered me more than anything. Ketanji Brown Jackson can refuse to answer any question. So I'm not saying there's any question that's proof of her, that's a way that will trap her that she has to answer. But you can ask her in general, is there a societal impact? Right now, Congress hasn't defined this word. Obviously, the Supreme Court hasn't, because Congress would have to first. Is there a societal concern with us not being able to come together as a union? We purport ourselves to be a union, and we cannot unify, or we have not, in my opinion, we cannot agree on this fundamental issue. Ketanji Brown Jackson, do you have societal concerns about us not being able to come to a consensus on this definition? So that the reason why I phrase a question like that is she wouldn't have to take a side. She wouldn't, because she obviously doesn't want to. We know that she's probably on the critical theory side, even though I have no proof from this hearing because no one got her to admit it. She actually said she doesn't take critical, at least race theory into account with her cases. But that way I could say, are you concerned about the societal impact It doesn't matter which side of the ideology. So I don't know how she would wiggle out of that question. Maybe she would say, hey, I don't want to comment on it because I might get a case. And I would say, well, wait, I'm not asking for ideology. I'm asking for, do you think it's important for our country to come to a consensus on such a fundamental issue? Whether it doesn't matter what side you're on. That's a question that I wanted to have asked. So that's where I'm at with this, is I'm not looking at Ketanji Brown as the concern. Imagine a country that cannot, could not, and is not even willing to at this point agree on a definition for the word woman. Let me know what you think. Take care.